Overnight, Russia launched one of the most devastating attacks on Ukraine's capital since the start of this war. According to reports, Russia launched close to 800 drones, missiles in Ukraine overnight. Here's just a sampling of what people were witnessing. Watch.
Boom. Yeah, not being intercepted here.
Нихуя себе.
And here's some other neighborhoods you can see as well. Take a look at this.
Well, Russia was warning foreign diplomats to get out of Kiev that they were going to hit it hard, and that has started. But this is only the first round.
Our next guest warned that this was coming last week, and here we are. What does this mean for this war going forward? Is this the gloves off moment from the Russian military? Was this just a warning shot across the bow? Europe seems to be doubling down, preparing for a longer, drawn-out war. We talked about the robotics that are now going to be coming to the battlefield. The Trump family making millions of dollars with that no-bid contract for robotics to now be hitting the battlefield in Ukraine. So forget soldiers, the 2 million Ukrainians that are dead. Who cares anymore, right? We'll just use robots to try to fight against Russia. So what comes next? Colonel Douglas Macgregor predicted that this was going to happen, told us exactly what was about to happen, and here we are. Colonel, great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks. Good to be with you.
What do you make of this latest round of attacks last night? What was used? What do you know? Maybe we can just speak militarily first, and then we can talk more broadly about the next stages of this war.
Well, before I try to make some sense out of all of it, I just want to say that I've known Ben Freeman for years, and Ben has been in the fight for rationality and defense longer than I have. So I'm really glad that you brought him on, and I'm not surprised that he's under attack for doing what he's doing. But this is a do or die mission, I think, right now in the eyes of the Israel lobby. But thanks to people like Ben, there's a chance we can stop this. I think what we're seeing with the Russians, as you point out, is what we anticipated. They've used tactical theater ballistic missiles, various kinds of unmanned systems, cruise missiles. We could go through the vocabulary. No one will remember what all of these were, but you're talking about 1,000, 2,000-pound warheads, precision guidance. What's important is that even though they struck a number of targets, the targets were all related to military functions. And then secondly, only 17 people were killed, as far as I know. None of this is going to make up for the loss of the lives of those schoolgirls and school children that were killed in in Russia. But this probably makes the population of Russia somewhat happy to know that there's a price being paid for this. The problem, and this is the most important question, and you raised it, Clayton, what does this really mean?
A dorm was hit in Russia-controlled Ukraine, and I think 27 college-age schoolgirls were killed, and like 100 others injured.
Is this the beginning of something bigger, more sweeping, more decisive, or what? And I think the Russian people are asking the same question. Once again, strikes alone do not win wars. If you're waiting around for everybody to give up and throw their hands in the air and go home in eastern Ukraine, it's not going to happen. They're going to sit there as long as they are allowed to sit there. So the question is, when will the concentrations of Russian ground forces actually move decisively west and put an end to the war? So I don't have the answer.
It's going to start this year.
So in some ways, Colonel, is this like the Doolittle raid? And not to be like a history nerd here, but of course, after the attack on Pearl Harbor in World War II, we carried out the Doolittle raids right against Tokyo. It was really for the cameras. It was to show that we could attack and hit Japan barely and just kind of put it.
I don't think so. Russia's changed the way it approached the war. It is hitting decision-making centers, something it didn't do in the past.
Now, this is totally different in that Russia could hit Ukraine with all it wants, whenever it wants. Totally different than the Doolittle raid. But is this really, I guess, maybe for the cameras, or was this a really strategic strike, softening up targets ahead of a massive move by the Russian army?
Well, that's what I don't know. It certainly hit critical nodes. There's no question about that. So you could say it was strategic. But we know from experience throughout history that however powerful your strikes are, if you cannot rapidly follow them up on the ground and exploit the effects, then the strikes don't win the battle. This is something the Russians really learned the hard way against the Germans. Eisenhower and Zhukov were talking after the war, and Eisenhower was showing him various kinds of equipment. He showed him some mine sweeping equipment. And Zhukov asked General Eisenhower, well, how long does it take you to get that equipment to the front? And he said, well, perhaps an hour, maybe two. And Zhukov said, that won't work against the Germans. If you don't exploit the street right away, within 10 minutes, the Germans are there and will kill you. That was the end of the discussion. I think this is the problem the Russians have got to fix. They've got to follow up these strikes. They cannot just launch, sit back, applaud the outcomes, celebrate the effects. They've got to cross that river and get into Kiev and get rid of this regime. They've got to cross the river. They've got to march south, go into Odessa, and seize Odessa. These are absolutely vital things that must happen. And I don't think that the Russians should be all that concerned about what the Europeans say or do. I mean, these people are, to be polite, full of hot air. They have nothing to throw back. And right now, Donald Trump is sitting somewhere in a dark room trying to
he's busy with the Iran situation.
Find his way out and can't down in the Persian Gulf. So he's not going to get involved in this.
Now, we're talking about corruption and people who profit from the war. Some reporting is that a MOD plant that was linked to Zelensky was hit by Russia. And so, this will at least, I mean, I don't know what this accomplishes. Maybe you could tell me. The factory was long linked to Zelensky. It did produce long-range attack UAVs and missiles. So at the very least, it weakens Ukraine's ability to answer if they do advance into these cities.
Well, one of the people that works with me closely, who reads Russian and speaks Russian fluently, goes to the press every day for me. And one of the things he did for me was he went through several press releases over the last many weeks. And I don't know how many times it was. I think 3 or 4 times the comment was made about Messieurs Kushner and Witkoff, and saying, we understand, we're Russians, we're familiar with this sort of thing. We understand why Kushner is there as a son-in-law and why Witkoff, an old business crony of the president, is there. But please, can't you send some people back who are prepared to talk seriously about the issue, which is ending the war in Ukraine, finding a way out of this? We can make side deals with them at their convenience after the talks. I mean, stop and think about that statement. That was what's in Russian in the papers. I think we have a huge problem with this corruption business. You have BlackRock that is trying to buy up hundreds of thousands of acres of Ukrainian farmland. You have people that are talking about turning eastern Ukraine, or western Ukraine rather, into some sort of a new Israeli destination by denuding it of Ukrainians and bringing in people from Israel. I mean, there are all sorts of strange things going on, but you also have to look at the money sources and where the money's coming from. You suddenly realize these are all the same people that are pushing for war in the Persian Gulf and have been pushing for war against Russia. It's frightening, and it does pay handsomely. And I think the Russians know that. And I think increasingly you're going to see the Russians pick targets that they know represent investment from the West, particularly from the United States.
Well, to your point, can you put the link I just sent you on the screen? Mm-hmm. That's in TASS. Russia is, in fact, looking for diplomacy while they are escalating the war. This is in English here. Russia is ready for normalizing relations with U.S., provided its interest, because they know there's no one in Ukraine to talk to that would be able to be a serious decision maker. They are still reaching out. Who the hell in the U.S. is receptive to this? It's a busy signal, don't you think?
Yes. No, I think you're being kind. I'm not even sure the phone is hooked up. I think we're dealing with a very amateurish group. They thought they were going to walk in, take over this successful government, or whatever they thought it was at the time, and they were going to ride it to greater glory. It's almost as though they went down to the pier, got onto the biggest yacht they could find, and said, okay, let's go, let's fish, let's party on the ocean. They've discovered that the yacht's in pretty bad shape. The ocean isn't cooperating. Storms are terrible, and there are people trying to sink them. And they're sort of in denial. You know, you've got the president.
Yes, I think Trump had the same view as Asmongold as to the power of the U.S. military. And this Iran war has been a rude wake-up that the United States military isn't quite as supreme as people believe, unfortunately. It's still the strongest, but the strongest... You can be the strongest by miles, or you can be the strongest by inches.
Into the United States, who talks a great game. I mean, every time he opens his mouth, he tells everybody we're close to a settlement. The war will be over any time. This is the same man that told us all, even before he was elected, I can end the war in Ukraine on a phone call. Mm-hmm. What's he been able to do? Nothing. And this is back to what Putin talked about when he met W and subsequently Obama and eventually Biden. He said, I talked to all these presidents.
Yeah, no, he was trapped in Ukraine by the media, by portraying Russia as evil, made it impossible for Trump politically to get a deal in the Ukraine war. because, Ukraine is still trying to get back Crimea.
He said, I think all of them are well-intentioned. They all promise to do things. But once they're installed, nothing happens because I don't think they're really in charge. And I think he's concluded that President Trump is not in charge. And I don't know who he expects to talk to. He would like to talk to someone in the State Department. He would like to see some evidence for a coherent.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if Putin could negotiate directly with the deep state, the ones who really pull the strings?
Strategy. Remember, their underlying assumptions are not the same as ours. They're assuming we would like to see the war end. I'm not sure that's true. That's very clear on the Russian side. I think more the European publics feel that way. Most Americans aren't even interested. But he's not dealing with something.
The reason that it's not possible is the globalist U.S. deep state, they need Russia's defeat and balkanization and to loot the country to just keep the whole Western financial Ponzi scheme going for a few more years.
Someone who wants to end the war. And
possibly, I've got a bunch to cover, so in a little bit. I have this video to do. The other one, I guess I can do the other video another night, so I have this video to get through. I don't know if I'm watching the whole thing, but I'm going to, I still have a bunch to get through. Maybe in like 40 minutes, 30 minutes.
And what we've done is we've convinced China, Russia, and Iran of the value of a triangular alliance that reinforces itself and is prepared to cope with whatever attacks we throw at them. I think that's the real outcome.
Before we take a break, I want to get your take on this massive new tranche of money from the EU that's really flowing into Ukraine and then by proxy into Sweden, purchasing these Gripen fighter jets last week. I saw some Ukrainian apologists online saying, thank God this will turn the tide of the war, that Ukraine is going to get 150 of these Gripen fighter jets.
Oh, yeah, we're getting closer and closer to World War III now. I can actually see the path for World War III now, in Europe side at least. Russia finally getting fed up and hitting a NATO state, which could happen anytime.
From Sweden, and they're going to be delivered soon. I don't know how long. $90 billion. Now they took out a loan. They've already completely mortgaged their future to the IMF, the World Bank, and so forth. So Ukraine is not a country by any chance anymore. Anyway, they've mortgaged everything to BlackRock and Vanguard. So now $90 billion for these freaking fighter jets. And I posted online, and I said, you've got to be foolish. The idea that these jets are going to really ever land in theater at all and wouldn't be destroyed the moment they hit the ground, is ridiculous. And also, if they did get off the ground, who's going to fly these things? Like, are there just like tons of great fighter jet pilots sitting there in Ukraine in a conference room, like just
waiting for the equipment? Yeah,
waiting for eating ramen noodles, just waiting for that jet. Like, what is this? Is like madness to me, Colonel. Can you unpack this?
Yeah, the issue is when would China become involved? Because that's when things get serious. At some point, it does feel threatened. It's two big non-Western allies, Iran and Russia, are under attack. And yeah, I think it if it did become Russia, Europe, possibly China could join in just to put an end to things. You never know. Or yeah, that's I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, the thinking in China.
Well, I can tell you that I've been to the Gripen assembly line, and that is a brilliant aircraft. Pound for pound, given what you're paying for it, it's maybe the best aircraft in the world.
Wow.
If there were any country in the world today and I had a choice between the F-35 and the Gripen, I would take the current modernized Gripen. It's easier to maintain. Its performance in the air is spectacular. We grossly overstate the value of all this stealth. Stealth can delay detection in many cases, but it doesn't guarantee invisibility by any means. But you're right, Clayton. Maybe they're going to cut a deal. The Austrians have the Gripen. Maybe they can entice, for the right amount of money, large numbers of Austrians to come in and sit in the pilot seats. I don't know how long it will take them to get 150 Gripens. I imagine they won't all show up tomorrow. So I think they can probably find some pilots that are already out there. And the Austrians still remain very, very pro-Ukrainian. They don't really understand the fight over there themselves, but they still remain very pro-Ukrainian. That goes back to the old Austrian
Anyone who's been propagandized by the West is pro-Ukraine
empire. So I'm sure they can find people to pilot those aircraft. We've got a lot of mercenaries on the ground right now in Ukraine, as you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they'll be lining up to fly them. If they even, I just can't imagine. I mean, Russia's going to see these deliveries arriving, whether by rail or otherwise. And how are they just not going to level them the moment they arrive on a tarmac? But
well, I think that's true, but I would go one step further. I think the Swedes ought to reconsider the wisdom of this whole business because their factories could very easily be targeted and destroyed. There's not a damn thing they can do about it.
No, that's a great
And
point.
if they think that the United States is going to trigger a nuclear response to Russia, they're out of their minds.
Yep.
We are not going to put the United States of America at risk of total annihilation in a nuclear holocaust because the Russians strike a target in Sweden or Lithuania or Latvia or Estonia or Poland or anywhere else.
Which I think is coming at some point. That's some provocation from Ukraine, and there's probably already the plans in place to bomb these factories. And it's the right provocation, right circumstances is all they're waiting for to put the plan into effect.
Extended deterrence is dead. It's a joke. We need to get away from it. It's not going to happen.
And NATO is a joke, which would show that the emperor has no clothes. Colonel, stay right there. I'm going to take a quick break. We want to come back and talk about this.
And you have to understand, once Russia attacks one NATO country, its restraints are off. It has no reason not to attack every other target in NATO that it wants to. Every factory that's producing stuff for Ukraine to kill Russians, every one of them becomes a target. They have no reason to hold back. I just wanted to highlight the situation is very dangerous in Europe too. That both Iran and Ukraine are escalating at the same time. And just, there's not much we can do about it. Just be ready for what's to come. Anyway, this will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Come watch on Kick or Twitch. And I'll see you next video. Bye.